we got one wrong, it can happen to anyone. Except Sastro. You got this one right, didn't you?
Yeah. I think you should get pretty used to me being right all the time.
All right. Anyway, so we saw a lot of dampening. We saw the Nightmare in the end. If you were looking at the ship, you could see that it wasn't actually firing at all. We assume that's based on the dampening going on. To those wondering what exactly that is, what is that, Sastro?
Sensor dampening, you can either lower the scan resolution or the scan range or targeting range of a ship. And it seemed to me, because the Drakes were taking so much damage when they were shot, that they probably did not have a shield tank filling up their mids. They probably had a whole bunch of damps and other E-war going on in their mids. And it's, as Chidu said earlier, mids can be the big difference in a team.
Yeah, absolutely. Helion brought a very impressive setup there. That's basically a damp plus kite team with Tengus as your main damage, probably also running gang mods, at least one of them is. And then your Drakes might have been just fully damp fit. And as we saw, the Nightmare, decision to field the Nightmare by Vanguard was a little bit interesting to me. I'm not sure why they picked the Nightmare over, let's say, a Macariel or something like that. That would be a little bit faster to get into range. Of course, Nightmare has more range, but in this match, as we saw, it did nothing at all for them because probably good luck to 20 kilometers max.
It didn't seem like they had as focused of a team composition as Perihelion did, and that may be, in fact, because they do not have an Alliance logo.
I see.
And that's really telling in which team you should pick.
10% bonus to sensor dampening for Perihelion there. The fun logo.
Exactly. Yeah, that didn't work out entirely well. We have Severance and we have Paiste Syndicate coming up now. Those are very, very good matches. But after that, we have 4 amazing matches. We have -10 versus AAA. We have Raiden versus Darkseid. We have Ushura Khan versus Pandemic Legion. Unaffiliated versus Hydra Alliance. Would it be fair to say that these 4 matches have a realistic chance of containing the tournament winner?
I think so. I think there's going to be at least number 1, number 2 in those. Well, let's see.
If there's any matches today that have the winner, it is probably the ones starting from now, except for Pandemic Legion. I don't really think they're in the running this time at all.
All right. There's no super caps in this.
There are no super caps in here, and without super caps, I don't think Pandemic is going to be able to pull this one out.
What do you think of super caps, John?
What do I think of super caps?
Yes.
Currently, I don't really like where they are. We had this big problem with super caps back in the day, specifically Titans, because it was like if you had a bunch of Titans on the field, you could just doomsday everyone's subcaps, and then that would be the end of it. And back in those days, you measured your alliance strength by your dread fleet and how many dreads you could bring. And you had a pretty interesting sort of rock, paper, scissors setup with that. You could have a Death Star, which could keep a bunch of subcaps at bay, especially if it was gunned. But the Death Star couldn't really do anything to a dread fleet. But the dread fleet was sort of at the mercy of a big subcap fleet, a big sniping battleship fleet, like this lovely little model we have over here on the right, which is not on camera, but it's an APOC. The subcap fleet, if you won the subcap battle in like a big alliance fight, whichever subcap fleet was still in the field could wipe out all the dreads that were there. And when the supercaps got buffed, we're at a point now where the supercap tanks are so big that even if the subcap fleet wins the fight for the field, they still can't crush the supercap fleet the way they could have crushed like a dread and carrier fleet. And I think that makes Alliance v Alliance warfare more a question of who can bring the most supercaps at any given time. When before, a strong battleship fleet was the most important thing, which I think is also more inclusive. More people can bring subcaps than can bring supercaps. So, well, I think they're cool ships. I mean, everyone likes Titans. We're at a point at a time where more equals better than, and not like more diversity of fleet compositions.
But Titans aren't in that bad of a state. I mean, super carriers are...
Yeah, I think that Titans are in that bad of a state. It's because the more Titans you have, especially if you're going to bring a whole bunch of Titans, there's probably going to be 1,000 people on the field anyway, so it's going to be really laggy. And the Titans' ability to just start eliminating ships with the Doomsday right off the bat, it makes them even more dangerous than the super carriers. When you're talking, I think PL had like 30 together at one point last week. No one's going to try to bring any dreads and carriers to try to fight that because 30 Doomsdays is going to annihilate a fleet. All of those 1,000 ships on the field is going to bring the system to a lot of slowdown, and they're not going to be able to do as much DPS as they usually do without that slowdown. So, because the system's going slow, they're not going to be able to do their full DPS before those Doomsdays recycle and then wipe out another 30 dreads. So maybe Shadu disagrees with me. He probably does. I would like to see super caps be in a state where more didn't necessarily equal better than. It's good to have a few, but not huge piles of them that nobody can contest.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with everything, well, nothing that you've said there. But I do agree with the fact that I think super carriers and Titans need a role change. They need a little bit of more of a focus away from combat, in my view, especially on the Titan front. It is getting a little bit silly. I think we fielded something like 60 Titans in one fight, and yes, I agree. Anything you bring into that is stupid. But having said that, I don't agree with the fact that subcaps are necessarily completely wiped out by supercap only fleet. We would never field a supercap only fleet without having support in our back pocket, because in our experience that gets you killed, and Y-2 systems especially.
Well, you're certainly going to need tacklers around, but I think that's really the only role subcaps have when you have just a bunch of supercaps on the field. I do not think they can put up enough DPS to really threaten the kind of tanks that supercaps have.
I think what the problem is the log-off timer, that super capitals have such a large
We've had
buffer.
huge fights about the old log-off-ski
Yeah.
before, but it is true that if a whole supercap fleet were to accidentally get disconnected by some strange internet magic,
Just
Which
that
it does
that
all the time.
that fleet got hit by like an issue on the internet.
yes, an issue on the internet, and 50 super carriers all were floating in space, linked dead. You're only going to be able to kill maybe like 3 or 4 before they all just disappear.
Yeah.
So if you have a critical mass of supercaps, you're only ever at risk, even in like the worst possible situation, of losing 3 or 4. Whereas if like a dread fleet were to all just suddenly manage, you'd be losing a whole lot more of them.
Yeah.
And it would be more of a crushing defeat.
Not that many, a few more. I think, is that the problem of super capitals though? Or is
That
a
is the main problem of super
because,
capitals.
in this fight in the north, which you obviously weren't following at all, there was one fight where Northern Coalition brought a large super capital fleet on a gate with minimal support fleet, and we brought only sub capitals because the system was Sinochammed. As we saw there, they were able to do decently well until they got into trouble, and they simply locked off and nothing died from the super capital fleet. If the log-off mechanics were different, I believe that we'd be looking at 3 dead Titans and 40 dead super capitals, super carriers.
Yes, and it would only, because it's so hard to build the super caps, if such a situation did happen, then you wouldn't see this continuing problem of super caps never dying. And the problem with that is because the super caps never die, even if an alliance gets crushed, those super caps are just going to shuffle around to new alliances, and you're going to see this continuing problem.
Did you say that you thought building super caps was difficult?
It is difficult, yes.
The massive proliferation on TQ disagrees with you.
Yes, and that is nothing. Well, remember, super caps are being built for years and years now, and it wasn't that they were easy to build. It was just they never died. And they still rarely die because it's like we were just talking about earlier.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember, Sastro is from Goonsfarm, who of course do not put Strunt in their super capital building towers.
All right, let's get back to the super caps later. We have fight number 4 of the day coming up. It's Severance versus Paiste Syndicate. I have Severance for this one. Sastro?
I like Seb 3 Rants.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that they have a very strong sounding alliance name.
I think Paiste Syndicate is finished, so I have to go with that.
And Severance. I have to get one right before the day's out.
Okay, so 3 on Severance, 1 on Paiste
I like how
Syndicate.
this time you all went with mine.
Yeah, pretty much.